Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. We're still on our summer break, so this is a normal questions pod, but a little bit shorter than normal. We recorded it on the 20th of August, so if something massive has happened between then and whatever day you're listening to this on, as I've lost track already, it's like I said, it's like Christmas, Kieran, but sober. I don't like it. I'm Kevin Day. He's Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. How's your summer break going, Kieran? I assumed that you'd be spending it researching and relaxing, but, well, you went to ABBA instead.
Well, yeah, I went to the ABBA Voyage show in that their London place, and it was amazing. And ABBA have always been a guilty pleasure of mine. I actually have a photograph of Agnetha that I took when I was 13 years old, when she was walking down the seafront at Brighton. I think this was 2 days after winning the Eurovision Song Contest in 1974, which is one of my prized possessions. I don't think it probably means more to me than it does to her, though.
I don't think you need the probably there, Kieran. I'm guessing it doesn't mean an awful. I'm guessing that if you were to talk to her now and say, do you remember 2 days after winning the Eurovision Song Contest, a little bespectacled accountant-looking child, she'll say, no, I remember his scary-looking uncle behind him. Did she know you were taking the photograph?
Yeah.
Oh,
She smiled. Yeah. They ABBA are wonderful as far as I'm concerned. And I won't have any truck with the naysayers.
I'm not saying I'm a naysayer, Kieran. What I did take slight exception to was when I put a question mark and a puzzled face when you said you were going to see ABBA, was when you said, no, all the punks in Brighton loved ABBA. That kind of summed up the punk movement in Brighton more than anything else. But I'll take your word for it, Kieran. I'm sure ABBA Voyage, as we call it in South London, was very good. I hear the technology is amazing.
It's absolutely staggering. Yeah, I mean, the only trouble was that you had to go and get your mum to go into Virgin Records to buy the ABBA albums because, of course, you couldn't be seen buying an ABBA album from a record shop because you're trying to be one of the boys.
Yeah, imagine all that technology for that ABBA show. Imagine what would happen if the equivalent of producer Guy went away and left the equivalent of you and I in charge of. There'd be a lot of apologising. Anyway, questions time. And remember, dear listeners, we recorded this on the 20th of August. So again, apologies if we're not covering a massive story. We will do as soon as Kieran is back from ABBA heaven. And our first question comes from Mark Goodchild. I'm just thinking of the journey home, Kieran. I imagine the Baroness was singing along at the top of her voice, was she?
Yes. Prosecco had been consumed. It was her birthday as well. So, yes, there was much merriness from half of the car. And the other half was I was going, well, can't we listen to a serious podcast by The Economist or something? No, and then she's off to gimme a man after midnight.
Mm-hmm. There you have your imaginary punk hairstyle singing along with her. Mark Goodchild. This is covering the fact we really don't have many questions. Mark Goodchild says, with the buying of BT Sport, I was curious to know where Discovery are getting their money from. Is it from subscribers or from a parent company?
Well, Discovery themselves are owned by Warner Brothers. So they have set up a joint venture with BT. So both parties are going to own 50% of this new company. But in order to get things aligned on setup, Discovery they've only put in an initial £93 million. So that's less than the cost of a film. Isn't it one of the new Batgirl films has been canned by Warner Brothers or somebody else, and that's cost more than that because I think the rushes have been pretty appalling. It could cost them up to 540 million. I think the issue for Discovery and where we are in the world of streaming is not dissimilar to where we were perhaps just over 20 years ago when we had that tech boom. For every eBay, there was a e-auction site, which in fact there was 10 or 20 of them, which have all died. For every Amazon, there were 20 or 30 online retailers all trying to. So what I think we're seeing in the world of streaming is that punters are now starting to realise just how much am I spending each month. If I've got Sky and BT and Amazon and Netflix and Disney Plus and Apple TV and Discovery Plus, you work out how much that costs you to sign up for all of these streaming services, and it is a very significant sum of money. So Discovery presently have something called Discovery Plus. Now that will cost you £3.99 a month, and I went on to Discovery Plus to see, what exactly is available, and that includes programs such as, and you get these exclusively: Spooked Scotland and Expedition Bigfoot. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not necessarily going to be drawn in by those, and what we've seen with football is it has two main features. First of all, it genuinely attracts subscribers. And secondly, it stops those subscribers from cutting the cord after your 30-day trial. And that's why Amazon bought into the Premier League. When you sign up for Amazon Prime, you can have this 30-day trial period. You get those matches around pre and post Christmas. And then you say, I might try this free delivery stuff with Amazon. And Amazon have crunched the numbers. They realise just how many people are staying with them on the back of that. So it's used as sort of an entry drug as far as that part of the business is concerned. Discovery Plus also have a £6.99 model, and that includes Eurosport. Now, I'm not being critical of Eurosport. What they have is a very, very broad palette of sporting products available. But again, there's a limited number of people who are willing to pay a premium to get live power boating or underwater tiddlywinks or whatever it's going to be. The sports tend to be niche sports. The people that play those sports, I've got huge respect for. They're completely dedicated professionals in their own area. But they don't tend to be mass audience. With perhaps there's one or two exceptions. I think they're very big in cycling, for example, in Eurosport. But it's not delivering the numbers and it's not keeping the numbers. So we're presently going through sort of a period of due diligence between the two parties, getting regulatory approval, and I think the aim is to have a single sort of BT/Eurosport offering, which will bring you the Champions League, plus what Eurosport have got, plus BT Sport's existing commitments to the Premier League and so on, as a means of trying to build up. So that's where we are. The cost to Discovery, those upfront costs are pretty insignificant when you compare it to just how much BT are paying for the rights for the Champions League. So it's not an expensive investment. Whether it will prove to be a successful one is down to externalities. We don't know where the global economy is going over the course of the next 5 years. Things are tough for consumers at present, and the perception of the quality of the product.
Eurosport are very big on winter sports, winter games. It's fantastic. I love it. Around Christmas, it's like having a weekend in Austria. It's a very cheap way of pretending you're abroad. You get some blue wine, put Eurosport on, get yourself a bell.
Yes.
I also have to say I quite like the sound of Spooked Scotland. That sounds good. I've seen a bit. Expedition Bigfoot is available on my TV. It's presented by Jack Osborne, son of Ozzy, because a lot of Discovery Plus seems to exist purely to employ the Osborne family. Essentially, and you'd be amazed how many jokes about Ozzy Osbourne there are in Expedition Bigfoot. If I knew the address of Discovery Plus, I'd write to them and say, first time you say that could be Bigfoot or it could be my dad, it's quite amusing. When you're doing it 4 times an episode, less so. Jack Walmsley has an interesting question, and one that, to me, who's not one of the country's leading experts in accountancy and football finance law, seems eminently sensible. Jack Walmsley says, under insolvency law, a company is deemed insolvent if it is, quote, unable to pay its debts. Now, as most clubs in the EFL operate at a loss and the value of their assets is less than their liabilities, does this mean that technically most clubs are insolvent?
You are absolutely correct, Jack. They are technically insolvent. So if we take a look at there are 2 broad definitions of insolvency. First of all, the assets, the thing you own, are they less than what you owe? So if I've got a house which is worth £500,000 and I owe the bank £750,000, I'm technically insolvent. In the case of football, that is very much the case. There are huge numbers of clubs who are effectively reliant upon their owners to make up that gap. In terms of his other definition is can clubs pay their debts as they fall due based on their day-to-day operations, based on their ability to generate income from broadcast, from commercial deals, from ticket sales. And I think we can also potentially factor in player sales as well. Again, there are many clubs which would be deemed to be insolvent on that basis. I do monitor the cash flows of all clubs. And again, those clubs are reliant upon owner benefactors to dig them out of their mess. So football is a precarious industry. I was talking to somebody earlier this morning before we had our conversation, and he was going, "Well, yeah, football's been really successful." I said, "Well, you've got to look at the numbers in a bit of detail. Since the Premier League started, the total income of the Premier League has increased by 2,800%. On the face of that looks absolutely fantastic." You then look at the wages of the Premier League, and the wages have gone up by 3,300%. So it means that the main benefactors of the success of the Premier League have been the players. And I've said this on many occasions. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. It's a talent industry, and I'd much rather the money goes to the talent than the owners. But I think it is indicative of an industry in which cost control has not been a success throughout certainly the last 30 years at least.
Earlier this morning, you spoke to somebody earlier this morning. I'm sulking because we're doing this at 9:15. You spoke to somebody earlier than that. Holy mother!
Yes. A young. We've got a huge range of listeners, and somebody who is doing a master's dissertation contacted me and wanted half an hour of time. And I think we're both firmly of this belief that we want to help anybody that we can. So any student that wants to get up at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, first of all, I think your membership of the National Union of Students should be cancelled from an old student's point of view. But fair play to you. And I also admire anybody reaching out. I think that does show a bit of initiative.
Yeah, I'm a big man, Kieran, so I won't take exception to the fact that the student asked you for help and not me. It's fine. It's probably best if they don't ask me. Did ABBA do Money, Money, Money last night? Robot ABBA, did they do that?
They did. No, they didn't know that there was that. And there was the name of the game that they didn't do. And they did a couple of new songs. I thought, why are you getting robot avatars to, because we've all been to those gigs by bands and say, "Oh, we've got a new one." You think, okay, right, time to go for a dump. It's just and the whole impetus, the whole momentum of the crowd, and we were quite fortunate because we were right at the back in what they call a dance booth, and the Baroness and a load of ladies of ABBA style years, shall we say, were all dressed in their ABBA costumes, and they were giving it loads on the dance floor, and I I was tapping my toe.
A friend of mine who works in the music business was invited to an exclusive private concert by Tom Jones to debut his new album. And my friend went with about 150 lucky people to this private gig, assuming, of course, that they would hear a couple of classics. But no, he did the new album, that's it. And then when there was some disquiet at the end that he wasn't coming back, the person from his record company said, "Oh no, he's not allowed to do any of the old stuff because of COVID regulations." So, and didn't explain why. But
presumably because people would have been bopping and getting a bit up close and up close and groovy,
which apparently they certainly weren't during the new stuff. But that's annoying, isn't it? You sit there politely doing Tom Jones' new stuff, and at least throw Green Grass of Home in. Gareth Williams has a question that I think a lot of fans will be asking starting round about now, basically. So I'll be interested in the answer to this one. Gareth Williams says, will clubs still pay their players whilst they are on World Cup duty, considering it's during the normal season? And in brackets says this also applies to those on AFCON duty.
The simple answer, Gareth, is yes, they will. The players have a contract of employment with the football clubs, and that contract, and this is an ongoing issue for those clubs that have players who play in AFCON. That contract says we're going to pay you every month because you're still employed, but FIFA, and I'm sure there's many of our listeners that regularly look at FIFA's accounts. If you go to the FIFA 2018 annual report, you will find, if you go into the small print, something called the Club's Benefit Programme. And what FIFA have done, because they don't want to upset football clubs, because in theory, you might get a few clubs starting to be a bit awkward going forwards. They have something called the Club's Benefit Programme. And for the 2018 World Cup, FIFA paid to football clubs $209 million to cover wages during the tenure of the tournament. And what FIFA also have is a deal that if any players are injured during the World Cup and they subsequently miss matches for their domestic club, then FIFA has insurance payments to them to cover the fact the club is now paying the wages and the players unable to perform. So there is a compensation scheme from FIFA. It's a reasonably generous one as well. The World Cup is a spectacularly successful competition from FIFA's point of view, and it's not in their interests to upset the club's day-to-day employers.
Our next question comes from Simon Henson. I don't know if Simon is related to Jim Henson, but how lovely to even have the same name as a man whose imagination brought joy to millions of people. Simon says, my club Wycombe Wanderers recently moved away from the EFL iFollow app and created our own, Wanderers TV, which went live on February the 1st. Is setting up your own platform like this more lucrative? If it is, why are more teams not doing it? Are you aware of the costs of the iFollow service, as the EFL would presumably take a cut?
Well, yes, I mean, the EFL do take a cut to cover their sort of central costs, and that's eminently fair. If we take a look at the current position, I think it's 43 out of the 72 EFL clubs are involved in the EFL's own scheme. And then we've got other clubs such as Wycombe. I think Derby used to have something called Rams TV, where the club provides this service effectively as a sideline. There's different rules in terms of international rights versus domestic rights. We've still got the 3 p.m. Saturday blackout. The issue of streaming is proving to be an interesting one. So our friend Andy Holt at Accrington, anybody that follows Andy's Twitter feed, which is, and Andy gets his views across. I think it's fair to say that Andy is very unhappy with the current arrangement, because what the EFL clubs voted for was that the club selling the iFollow pass, and broadly what happens is that you pay £10 and you get a match pass. 100% of the money is given to the club that sells the pass. So therefore, if you've got a big club in League One, so we're talking, the likes of, Pompey, Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday, Derby themselves, of course, now, and Charlton and so on, they keep all the money. He says, he knows that Accrington is a smaller club. The population of Accrington is, 35,000. It's also, it's not far from Blackburn. It's not that far from, a number of large clubs in the Northwest. So Accrington have their work cut out. And he says, one of the reasons why we've managed to compete in League One is that we've always gone out of our way to be an attractive place to visit from a away fans' point of view. You and I, we did our live show there, and we were absolutely knocked out by the facilities. So his concern, and you can understand where this is coming from, is that it has a potential impact on away fan attendances. If you are coming from, say the southwest, or if you're coming from a fair old distance, you've got to get your way up to Accrington. You've got to pay the match fee. You're then paying your money for catering and so on. And if the option is the alternative is to pay a tenner, watch it from home, Accrington get none of that money. So they don't get the match day gate receipts. They don't get the catering receipts. They don't sell a programme. And he says it will increase the gap between the rich and the poor. So he says, as far as he's concerned, streaming is part of progress. Streaming is going to be a way of selling tickets. He's very, very unhappy about the fact that if a club such as Derby or Sheffield Wednesday, if those clubs are coming to his ground and they are selling 10,000 tickets, he doesn't get a penny from it. And he'd go, well, hold on, I'm hosting the match. That does seem a bit harsh. So certainly the distribution issue, and football, of course, has a history of money flows to the biggest, and the smaller clubs tend to get a raw deal. That would appear to be the case here. And in my view, Sheffield Wednesday and Derby, they will both sell out their away allocation to Accrington. Should the Accrington be able to make some money out of this as well? They should be able to benefit from streaming, and both clubs do. What this is doing, it's amplifying the existing gaps between rich and poor, we can look at that from a much broader social and economic issue in this country at present.
Excuse me. Well, Andy Holt also is concerned, as he discussed with us when we were there, because initially streaming was only brought in for overseas customers, and then evening games, domestic fans could do it. When there's an international break, I believe the 3:00 curfew doesn't count. I think so. He's worried that during the World Cup, when of course League One and League Two will continue, I believe, that those games will be streamed. And he said inevitably there will come a time in the near future when the 3:00 curfew is lifted completely, and then at that stage his club will suffer terribly. I mean, and he's, like you say, he's aware that some clubs are bigger than others, simple as that. But you can't have a system whereby none of that money is distributed. That's simply not right.
Yeah, very, very harsh.
Yeah,
very harsh. Sorry for that slight delay. The Baroness has just brought me a bacon ciabatta with coleslaw. And what else is on it? Guacamole. Guacamole as well, of course.
And spicy tomato chutney.
And spicy tomato chutney, I've just been advised. So this is my life, gang.
I mean, my wife is currently 300 miles away, Kieran, so you can rub it in like that. But what I will say, from a purely catering point of view, is you're not going to taste the bacon there, Kieran. Really, it's guacamole, spicy chutney. You just Uncle Terry would. I'm glad Uncle Terry's not here anymore, Kieran. If he could see,
Uncle Terry was red or brown Kieran, what do you want? Yeah, it was as simple as that, and he was a strict swordsman.
Yeah,
and occasionally a bit of HP.
yeah, not with the rest. Just, I mean, 2 slices of white bread, more slices of bacon than bread. Rest guacamole. Just where is it you live again? Sussex, you say? Oh yes. Well, I'm glad the Baroness is up and about. So soon after all the prosecco at ABBA. You're obviously in the good books. Chris Hoban has a question, which again I find this a very interesting one. Chris Hoban says if a player is loaned to a club and is successful in that loan spell, then potentially their resale value goes up. So if when they go back to the parent club then sells them for a significant amount of money, is there ever a deal whereby the club where they're on loan would get some extra money? So because they acted as a shop window and they improved the quality of the player.
Yeah, some people call this the Ben White tax, because if when Ben White went from Brighton to Leeds, I think it was 3 seasons ago, he was their player of the season. He had previously been on loan to Newport County in League Two, then Peterborough in League One, then Leeds United in the Championship, and Leeds were promoted. And I think he was player of the season. He certainly had a fantastic season for them. And he was then subsequently sold 12 months later for £50 million. Now Leeds fans have, or some Leeds fans to be fair, have been quite vocal in saying, well, hold on, under Bielsa, the player developed, we should see some of the benefits from that. And I think conceptually, you can see a case for that, but contractually, they've got no chance. So, as far as Chris is concerned, it's a gamble when you do take that player. So, what happens if the player goes backwards? Because you wouldn't want the club where the player's been on loan to have to go and pay out when the player is subsequently sold for less than he was originally worth 12 months later. So it works both ways. So unfortunately, for those clubs which utilise loan players, they don't tend to get a share of the proceeds. It could be argued that Leeds benefited because Ben White contributed towards their magnificent season in the Championship when they were playing some pretty sexy football. And of course they were promoted, and therefore indirectly they have benefited from the loan in a financial manner.
Our last question, Kieran, I intend to spit out for as long as possible. So by the time we finish it, your bacon sandwich is a cold, congealed mess. In fact, it's on ciabatta. It's bad enough, but guacamole and coleslaw. Just ABBA, guacamole. That's a good sound effect. As that sound effect has brought Smudge jumping on my lap. She can spot food being eaten. How far away are we? 50 miles. Sorry, Smudge, that sandwich is 50 miles away, darling. Brett Peckham is one of our regular Australia listeners. And Brett says, a quick question from Australia on the back of Spotify getting the naming rights to the Nou Camp. When local teams here from the A-League make it into the Asian Cup competitions, the grounds are normally sponsored, but they're not sponsored by a company entangled with the Asian Football Confederation. I don't know why. That's me saying that, not Brett. I'm sure he does. So instead of AAMI Park, for instance, it is referred to only as Melbourne Rectangular Stadium. Would Spotify, Melbourne, we got told off a couple of weeks ago for saying Melbourne, referred to as Melbourne Rectangular Stadium. Would Spotify or whoever have a separate contract with Barcelona so the ground is always officially referred to as Spotify Nou Camp?
Well, this is very much an issue, Brett, in terms of the small print in a contract. If you have a naming rights deal, that naming rights deal will either be on a universal stroke comprehensive basis, as we will see with Spotify and their relationship with Barcelona. Or it could be literally on a competition by competition basis, as appears to be the case here in Australia. So it simply is a case of our silver-tongued friends might have broken down the club's relationship in terms of naming rights, such that in competition A, we've got sponsor A, and in competition B, you've got sponsor B. And it could be for other competitions, there is no sponsor unless somebody's prepared to pay for that privilege.
Okay, thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod, that would be very kind of you, and you can do so by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. And remember, there is an option if you become a Patreon to avoid the adverts. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. We will be back next, what day is it? It's Thursday, is it? I don't know if it's Thursday or whatever, but we'll be back with our last summer break pod. And in the meantime, if he can tear himself away from his, I was going to say bacon butty, Kieran, but obviously you can't use the word bacon butty to describe what you've just been given by the Baroness. So I shall leave you in the capable hands of Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary, but slightly more mouth-filled farewell.
Well, as always, folks, thanks very much for all of your support. I'd just like to give a shout out. It's over the usual nonsense. I want to give a shout out to somebody I know, somebody I met recently who's a big fan of the podcast, Adam Pendlebury. Adam I met at a Law in Sport event in May. Recently, Adam had a seizure. He was diagnosed with a brain tumour and had surgery. And this is a subject which is close to our hearts because we've got somebody in our family that we love very much who's gone through something very similar. So Adam's been in contact and he is shaving off all of his hair, should I say. And we're going to give him a bit of support, and we want to put it out there. The amazing work done by Macmillan. And if you go to bravetheshave.macmillan.org.uk/shavers /Adam Pendlebury. If you want to support this amazing cause, that would be absolutely fantastic. Anybody who has either had to be through this very traumatic experience, and also the families of those involved, know how difficult it is, and that people such as Macmillan make a huge difference. So big shout out to Adam, and we're with you every step of the way as much as we can be.
We are indeed, and I'd like to endorse everything Kieran said there, particularly about the wonderful work done by Macmillan. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.